I think the key moment for me was when I started to realize that China was a much bigger enterprise than I had understood when I agreed to make the film. I thought we were just going to be making the film in America and China. It's a film about the future of the relationship between America and China. What I didn't realize and hadn't thought about was that if you are going to make a film about China today, you're effectively obliged to make a film all over the world. China is a global enterprise. It's a global power. So we filmed in Africa, in the Middle East, in the Gulf, all across Europe. It was a much more extensive undertaking. And because of that, way more interesting.
And so because you have this very intricate, interconnected relationship between the US, the China, and obviously the rest of the world, what would you say was your main goal then in creating this documentary?
We decided very early as a team that we were going to avoid at all costs making a kind of a policy film, a political film with experts, pundits, professors, the normal gaggle of experts who opine on China. I knew if I did that I would fail, and I knew I would be making a film that was a cure for insomnia. And I decided that the only way to do this was to really make an emotional film rather than an intellectual film. So, I have this kind of personal prejudice about movies and about how if we can touch people's hearts when we make a film, those movies stay with us.
And you can certainly get a sense from that in the trailer. When it first starts, there's this sort of them versus us mentality, and then you see sort of these missed opportunities, these commonalities, these common struggles. Why was it important to talk about the relationship from that perspective?
The Chinese understand America way better than Americans understand China. And I actually think that's a tribute to America, because America's propaganda machine, by which I mean it's popular culture, it's movies, it's television, it's songs, it's free press, it's journalism, it's books, that permeates the entire world. Everybody around the world understands a little bit more about America than possibly any other country, because America's so good at telling its own story.
With the American dream, for example? With
the American dream. China is dreadful at telling its own story, and it consistently shoots itself in the foot, in my opinion. China needs to be prouder about what it's achieved, and it needs to have faith and confidence in the stories of ordinary Chinese people. And I think if China could do that, if it could tell stories openly and without fear, people would understand what the Chinese are and what they have achieved during this last 30 years, which has been pretty extraordinary. It's something they should be proud of. And they don't need to explain it through propaganda. They need to explain it through simple human stories.
And it can be difficult, because when you think of the US and China, you think of obviously big government, and a lot of people might be wondering, is this pro-China? Is this pro-US? How should audiences be viewing this?
We are constantly asked if we are in the pocket of the Chinese government. Who paid for the film? In our case, our film was fully financed by American investors, by people who hoped that we were going to be able to turn a profit telling an honest, emotional story. We had no editorial oversight. We, I made the decision as to what was going to go in the film and what was not going to go in it, and no one had any choice about that. That was just the only way I would accept the assignment. But even when you have that kind of independence, both financially and editorially, people still say, well, this is not an anti-China film, So it must be a pro-China film. And the problem today is that the center doesn't hold. There is no center, actually. It's you're either for us or you're against us. And that I find terribly dispiriting, because this was never intended as a pro-China film, nor was it intended as a pro-America film, but it was intended to be a pro-America and China getting along film. And the reason for that is that, for me, it seems like common sense. If you have two superpowers on the planet, they have to treat with each other. They have to talk to each other. They have to respect each other. And they have to respect each other's differences.
And speaking of the media, obviously we see a lot of the rhetoric from the U.S. China relationship being played out. This is a midterm election year, obviously with the trade tensions between the two countries. Talk about the timing of these events and the release of the film.
For the last 2 years, we were collectively as a team very worried that by the time the film did get finished, it would be irrelevant, that what we were trying to say and do would be, because effectively it is news related, it is current affairs related. And in the news cycle, things move extremely quickly. I don't need to tell you that. So we were dreadfully concerned that it was going to be something that would, we would have to put on a shelf because no one would be interested. We could not have been more wrong, and we could not be more lucky to be enjoying this extraordinary moment in history where the subject of this film, which we planned 5 years ago, started 5 years ago, is suddenly on everyone's mind and on everyone's lips. Everyone's talking about the U.S. China relationship. Every time our president opens his mouth, practically, he sells our movie for us. And we are the recipients of some strange serendipity, I think.